Hello people and welcome back to ProRevenge. Please click like, subscribe and the bell icon for more videos from me. This will also help me out a lot and means that I'll be motivated to make more videos. You can always unsubscribe if you want, so please just click the subscribe button. Thanks and hope you enjoy the video.
Don't fire the guy who holds the patents. This is not my story. I was present for it, sure, but I did not see all of it personally. Rather, this is my father's story. So, some context. My father had a degree in mechanical engineering. Either a master's, or doctorate. It had taken him years to get, and he was very proud of that. Thanks to his training, he had found his way working for many well-known companies, working primarily with the procedures used to make various things. Over time, he'd privately began working on an idea that would revolutionize how school and gym lockers worked. See, my father realized that there was a problem with those type of metal lockers. Namely, it was very easy for a person to break into them. What's more, as the lockers were designed, there were multiple exposed moving parts, which meant that if a student put too many books in one, or really anything got against the door, the locker could be jammed shut, making it near on impossible to open. So, for several years, Dad toyed with a number of ideas, before hitting on a new design which would solve all those problems. The inner workings of the locker's locking mechanism would be contained within the door in such a way that 1. It was impossible for someone to shim or break into, 2. The entire mechanism would be enclosed, and 3. It was relatively maintenance-free. Now, at this point, my father was the vice president of manufacturing, and apparently there wasn't a clause in his contract that said that if he designed anything while working for the company, then he had to turn that over to them for profit. Dad still approached the company, offering them the design, but they weren't interested. Dad sat on the design for a while before eventually just taking out several patents on them, and then forgetting about them. About 6 months after his first attempt at getting the company interested, the parent company's owner/chairman of the board passed away, and the board opted to sell off some of the holdings. The company my dad worked for was part of that. The new owners were young guys who seemed to think they knew everything, as young business owners always seem to think, and they set about changing 99% of the way things were being done. At some point, they stumbled across the plans my father had designed. Now that's where things turned curious. They really wanted to start producing this new design, but as they didn't have all the plans and processes laid out for them, they had to turn to my father for answers. Rather than asking him how to do it, or licensing the patents, as any reputable company would have done, they ordered him to turn over all his work, or else they would fire him. Dad stood his ground and refused. The new owners and my father went back and forth, arguing over details for several weeks, before finally the new owners fired my father for insubordination. So, on to the revenge. There may be more to this, but I'm not entirely sure if it is just pro-revenge. It could border on nuclear, based on what happened some years later, though I'm not certain that what later happened had anything to do with my father's actions. So, after cleaning out his office, and packing things in the trunk of his car, my father headed home and made a few phone calls. He must have gone through 8 or 9 different calls before he got in touch with someone who was interested in what he had to say. See, my dad was under no illusions that the company that had fired him wasn't going to just make those patented lockers on their own. He also knew that though the company itself was relatively small, the owners had money and there was no way he could fight them. However, a larger company could. So he contacted the major competitors and made them an offer. He eventually set up a meeting with some people, wheeled out the prototype he'd made, explained how everything worked and noted that with this system the company could revolutionize the way lockers were both designed, and improve both safety and security. What's more, as he was the only patent holder, for the next 7 years or so, that company could be the only company to produce them. The competitor jumped at the chance and bought all patents both for the design, and the process. They even paid my dad a substantial consultancy fee to go out to their manufacturing site and teach their crews how to make the needed tool and die sets to produce them. Less than 6 months after the first company had fired him, their number one competitor was completely destroying them in the market with this new design, and there wasn't a damn thing the first company could do about it. They did try suing my father, claiming he had stolen their intellectual property, but that case quickly evaporated when they had to admit under oath that they'd never actually signed a contract with him, and there was no requirement that he turn over anything he created to the company. In the 7 years from when the second company bought the locker design and process patents, they pretty handily moved into markets that previously they'd been unable to. The first company soldiered on, but by the time the patent had finally expired, they were a shadow of their former selves. The new owners had sold the company at a loss, with the competitor buying it, only to shut that production facility down due to redundancy. Put maybe 200 people out of work, though given how they'd lost so much business, I wager that it was far less than that. So yeah, the new guys don't want to play ball, threaten the guy that holds the patents on something they want to do, and then fire him, only to have him take everything to their competitor and effectively put them out of business. Edit, to answer some of the questions that have arose. You don't know what his degree level was. My father and I had a difficult relationship. There are very few good memories I have of him, and it wasn't until shortly before his death in 2007 from a stroke, that I really started to connect with him. I resented him for most all of my life because he was more career-minded than anything. I figure we moved some 10 times in 20 years, and it greatly affected me. For a rather long period of time, I am ashamed to say, I hated my father and wanted nothing to do with him. 2. You must have ended up wealthy. Not really. Any money that Dad earned off his little endeavor was lost after an incident that left him disabled. Medical bills being what they are, by the end of it we were pretty much broke. 3. Patents last 20 years. Design patents don't. They last 14. But the courts have historically sided with companies infringing on design patents after 7 years, so long as the infringing company develops their own method to produce whatever design is being used and modifies or changes it. 4. What company was this? You know I can't tell you that. 5. Any variation of how did the new owners not know? That answer is pure speculation on my part. However, I got the impression that the owners were in their mid to late 20s, and trying to act like investors. The company was on offer relatively cheap, from what I know, but had a rather long history in the manufacturing field. After a lifetime of abuse, I burned everything down and got what I wanted. I don't want to make this too disturbing, but read at your own risk. And it's really, really long. TLDR at the end. Throw away because people know my other account. Part 1, The Childhood. My parents have always had a toxic and mutually abusive relationship. Physical fighting, screaming matches, destruction of each other's property and then a short honeymoon phase. I witnessed it all. It was a cycle. Not only did they abuse each other, but my mother would physically abuse us with regular beatings and my father would neglect us, allowing her to hurt us. We, my siblings and I, would see the worst of it on weekends. They would have events that lasted days, and often argued well into the late hours. My mother would even take us from home out of spite for my father and have us stay with her abusive family members for days and sometimes weeks. This, of course, would interrupt school and put us behind other students. I would often come to school tired after being kept awake by an incident between them. In addition to that, I was prevented from building meaningful friendships outside of school because of how strict my parents were. I wasn't even allowed to take part in extracurricular activities because they insisted they were meaningless and would corrupt me. Part 2, A Child's Revenge. I became resentful and angry. I hated that they would torment me and my siblings and then could cuddle and be lovey-dovey with each other during the honeymoon periods of the cycle. It disgusted me. By the time I reached my early teenage years, I made a decision to sabotage them at any chance I got. It was easy, since I had been watching their patterns for years. I stole money from my father in small amounts. I destroyed emotionally valuable items from each of them. I threw out food they were saving as treats for themselves. I found receipts of purchases they were hiding from each other and left them out for the other to find. I destroyed clothing. I made each of them think I was siding with them after arguments, getting them to talk to me, and then took their dirty secrets back and forth to increase their distrust of each other. The funny part was, they never suspected it was me. I was just repeating the same behaviors they had already been doing, so they always assumed it was the other one. Part 3, the next level revenge. As the years passed, I knew I would be leaving the household when I was an adult, so I expanded on my plan. I knew that my younger siblings would suffer in a household with both of them together, especially after I left. I had been sexually abused in childhood by one of my mother's family members. My father and siblings didn't know, but my mother did. She knew what this person was and left me alone with him multiple times. She hinted to me that if my father ever found out about anything her family had done, I would be responsible for breaking up the family. That was how she got me to keep quiet about all of the abusive things her family members had done to us. Between the two of them, she was the worst. My father was really just neglectful and willfully ignorant of the deep levels of abuse she put us through. He thought that his role as a father was to go to work, bring home the money, and relax. I knew it would take something powerful to make him step up. I also knew that if they were exposed to the authorities, there was a chance my siblings would get separated or be forced to live with worse family members whose evil deeds couldn't be proven. I waited all the way until a few months before I was prepared to leave the household. Then I told my father what had happened to me. I told him all the secrets my mother had kept from him regarding how her family would abuse us whenever she took us to visit and stay with them. My siblings were never sexually abused, but they were beaten and starved. I told him I was only telling him this now, because I was planning on moving out and I needed him to wake up and protect my siblings after I left. I told him there wasn't any hope of saving anything with me, but there was still time for the others to still have a good life. He cried. It had the desired result. The news traveled through the grapevine in the family quickly. All of their secrets were out. It caused a divide and shook the foundation of everything. People who had married into my mother's family took their kids away quietly. The family's reputation was destroyed in the religious community as well. I got tearful calls from some of them begging me to forgive and forget. Some accused me of lying, or accused me of enjoying it, and even asked me to take it back. I had successfully set my family on fire. I left on schedule. I cut off contact with my mother. I had extreme limited contact with my father. I talked to my siblings constantly. My father stepped up. He cut my mother's family off and didn't allow them to see my siblings anymore. He divorced my mother a while later, once he had the means to take the youngest siblings away and live alone with them. My mother has extremely limited custody. The older ones had already moved out by that time. Part 4, the result. I now am living without any family in another state. I'm getting mental health treatment and living my life the best way that I can. I still talk to my siblings. They kept me updated on what's going on. My father is really taking care of the youngest ones and he helps out the older ones when they need it. They have a far better life than I had, because he cares now. We don't talk that much about what happened and what I did for them. We still have a bond, and that's all I want. TL/DR. Parents and mother's family made my childhood an abusive living hell, so I destroyed my parents' marriage and exposed all of the abusers in the family. Plotted and manipulated the situation so my siblings stayed together and were taken care of.
Thank you everyone for making it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Leave a comment if you want. Please make sure to like, subscribe and click the bell icon for more videos. I have lots of other videos on my channel too, which should be on the screen right now, so please give them a watch. Thanks and bye.